Roses are red, violets are blue. Theory of Computation, Week 2.
So here's where we're at. So far we've discussed that computers are going to be taking inputs, which are going to be strings, and mapping those to outputs, which are going to be other strings. And somewhere in the middle, they're trying to figure out, when they're given some sort of string as input, what should that output string be? So something that's going to be really important for us to recognize going forward is that some functions that our computer might be trying to compute are going to be more complicated than others. So that means that in some very formal sense, we're going to be able to say that some functions are going to be easy and some functions are going to be hard. So let's see an example of this. So here I have an example of a function. So in this case, our domain is going to be bit strings of length 3. Our codomain is going to be bit strings of length 1. You can think of these as just singular bits, true, false, 0, 1, that sort of thing. So what we might want to do is we might want to try to describe as succinctly as possible which egg is going to belong in which container. So in this case, I might say that the egg belongs in the container which matches its last bit. So any egg that ended with a 0 goes into container 0, and any egg that ended with a 1 is going to go into container 1. So here's a different function. So I challenge you, pause the video here, see if you can come up with a succinct way to describe which egg goes into which container. Hopefully you came up with some easy ways for you to describe which egg is going to go in which container here. The way that I would communicate this is I would actually say that you put the egg into whichever bit is the majority of its bits. So for example, the eggs that are in container 0 all have more zeros than ones in its string, and all the eggs that are in container 1 have more ones than they do zeros. Now finally we have this example here. So this one I think is a complicated function. So as I look at which eggs are sitting in which containers, so what outputs belong with which inputs, I'm having a hard time coming up with a really succinct way of being able to identify which egg goes where. So I challenge you to ponder this, try to figure out a succinct way to express this function, and share that in the Week 2 Discord if you think of something. Now this was a purely intuitive example of this, but what we're going to be talking about today, this week, and throughout the entire semester is how we can categorize functions based on their difficulty. And what we're going to see is that there are some functions where its difficulty is going to be a property of that function itself, and then there's going to be some functions where how easy versus difficult it is to compute that function is going to depend on the model of computation that we're looking at.